This is the darkest moment of human civilization, but it is also the eve of the birth of the dawn, the final chapter of the zombie attack of 2026. Let's all join forces for the ultimate battle. It's the 30th day since the zombie outbreak began. After a cold autumn rain, the mountains are covered with golden maple leaves. The drifting leaves sway in the mountain peaks, filling the air with a desolate atmosphere. We have completely lost all contact with the outside world. The only thing we can be sure of is that the zombie horde has once again taken over this land, and their angry roars can be heard echoing through the forest at night. We are going to categorize and organize the supplies again, and limit the daily distribution of food and drinking water to prepare for a long-term stay. Thanks to my wife's careful budgeting, our supply of goods has gone from an estimated 7 months to 10 months. The father started planning the empty land on the farm so that he can plant vegetable seeds there next spring. The mother hen raised on the farm will eventually hatch a batch of chicks. In any case, life must go on. One day in late autumn, the wife solemnly held a flag-raising ceremony for their daughter to celebrate her successful completion of the basic survival rules in the post-apocalyptic world. The whole family attended and gave warm applause, feeling proud of the child's growth. Next, the wife plans to teach her daughter some basic agricultural knowledge, preparing her to become a versatile athlete in the future. I started organizing a large amount of research data stored on my computer and used the building materials I had stocked up earlier to set up a basic laboratory. As announced by our supervisor earlier, we have been researching the plan to discharge nuclear contaminated water into the sea and its impact on marine ecology for quite some time. One observation report on the degree of mutations in deep-sea organisms has caught the attention of the entire research institute. At that time, the mentor had already noticed that marine organisms were showing varying degrees of mutation due to nuclear contamination. However, for some fish living near a certain type of algae, their level of mutation is much slower, and it seems that the virus contamination on the seafloor is neutralized by this type of algae organism. I still remember what my mentor once told me. He said, "Jack, sometimes human civilization is like the ocean. We need to believe that the ocean has the ability to self-cleanse and self-heal, just like we believe in the resilience of civilization itself. It's a pity that the supervisor's research didn't have time to delve deeper before the virus rapidly spread worldwide. I have a subtle feeling inside that the extract from this algae plant might be the key to controlling the spread of the virus. We need to understand that if we can't suppress the virus at its source, zombies will continue to emerge endlessly worldwide. The priority now is to quickly resume virus research and strive to develop a vaccine as soon as possible to end this catastrophe. But right now, I can't even be sure if there are enough resources and manpower outside to support the research of vaccines. From a time perspective, what's even more frightening than wandering hordes of zombies is actually the deathly silence. During the days trapped in the farm, we were isolated from the world and unaware of the changes happening outside. The zombie horde in the woods kept me from going out alone to investigate. On the 60th day after the zombie virus outbreak, the first snow of winter started to fall in the mountains, with the north wind carrying flurries of snowflakes. As time goes by day, looking at the calendar on the wall, I can't help but calculate that if it weren't for this disaster, my daughter should be in first grade now, getting ready for winter break. The New Year's Eve bell should be ringing soon, and friends will probably be at a bustling steakhouse, patting each other on the back, laughing, and saying long time no see. But right now, all that's with us is the chilling winter, the quiet land, and the zombies' murmurs. At one point, I even had a hallucination that the world beyond the farm no longer exists, and our family is the only ember of human civilization left. I haven't given up researching the virus. After winter came, my father helped me set traps in the woods, and we caught a lone zombie. Compared to the beginning of the crisis, the zombies now show a significant decline in both their desire to attack and their ability to move. My father and I were able to capture it smoothly without much effort. On the way back to the farm, I noticed that the zombies on the road were making a low, groaning sound from their throats instead of their usual loud roar. It seemed like this group of zombies had lost their strength to scream. After returning to the shelter and ensuring adequate protection, I immediately proceeded to dissect the zombies. After cutting open the dried skin of the zombie with a surgical knife, a large cluster of fungal organisms squeezed out from under the skin. Now I am finally convinced that those infected individuals who have completely undergone necrosis are truly beyond saving. I forced myself to extract a sample of the bacteria and began researching the virus's activity cycle when it is separated from the host and exposed directly to the air. Afterwards, I also took blood samples from the whole family as a control, and indeed found the original form of the virus in everyone's blood. When a regular person's body functions normally, the body's immune system will reach a delicate balance with viruses. However, in individuals with weaker constitution, viruses will be more active in their bodies. My mother has always had poor health, so the virus in her blood sample shows a high level of aggressiveness, with the possibility of extensive damage at any time. I looked up with a heavy heart and saw a mother walking with her daughter outside the window, suddenly feeling a strong sense of helplessness. On the crude operating table, the dissected zombie suddenly raised its head and let out a low, eerie moan at an extremely low frequency. I suddenly felt uneasy and then blocked the zombie's mouth with protective gear. While I was busy handling blood samples, I suddenly heard my daughter and mother outside the window shouting in surprise. I quickly rushed out to check the situation. I saw a dark drone flying across the sky above, hovering briefly between the mountains before flying off into the distance without looking back. For the first time in a long time, we encountered human activities outside the farm. My daughter excitedly waved at the drone, but it quickly flew away, leaving leaving her disappointed with her head down. I furrowed my brow slightly and speculated that the unmanned drone of unknown origin seemed to be surveying the nearby terrain, giving me a strong sense of impending danger and prompting me to be on guard in advance. After nightfall, I gathered my whole family in the second-floor office at the farm. Behind the office walls, there's a hidden door that leads to a shelter in the cave, and the farm surveillance room is next to the office. If the daytime drones are controlled by nearby survivors, they may have a clear view of the defense situation at the farm. So, we took out a box of high-quality white liquor collected by my father to make Molotov cocktails. At the same time, we prepared 2 spears in the guardroom. In a situation where we were unsure if the approaching people were friendly, it was obviously a more prudent choice to be on high alert. In the night, a rare winter rain fell in the mountains and forests. The cold wind blew raindrops heavily against the windows. Looking from above, the 2 fences of the distant farm appeared blurry in the mist. In such bad weather, I guess no one will attack the farm. I comforted myself inside. In the late night, my father came to the duty room to take over from me. I groggily stood up and was about to go back to the next office to get some rest, but suddenly, I saw my daughter standing alone in the dark corridor, holding a teddy bear tightly in her arms, staring blankly at the window at the end of the corridor. I was startled for a moment and was about to go and check on her, but then my daughter slowly turned around, her face pale, and made a gesture for silence to me. She pointed ahead with her hand. I followed my daughter's finger and saw that the window at the end of the corridor was open, with the curtains flapping widely in the strong wind. A foul odor wafted in the air. With the help of the emergency light, I could clearly see 2 rows of crimson footprints on the floor. I suddenly couldn't sleep at all. My whole body felt like my blood froze. A thought exploded in my mind like a landmine. There are zombies breaking into the shelter. I immediately realized that I had made a fatal mistake. If the zombies from a few days ago have started to evolve with hunting intelligence, where did I get the confidence to think that a 3-meter-high fence around the farm could stop those constantly evolving zombies outside? The zombie I dissected during the day was definitely sending signals to the zombies outside the farm at a certain frequency. They have been roaming in the mountain forest for so many days, obviously preparing for today's attack. What's even more chilling is, how many of them got in? Where are they now? I carefully reached out and touched my daughter's back, motioning for her to quietly step back and warn others in the office. At that moment, I heard a snake-like hiss above my head. A loud warning rang in my heart instantly. Without hesitation, I pushed my daughter away and quickly stepped back. At the same moment, a zombie lurking on the ceiling crashed heavily onto the floor, and then roared like a mad dog as it lunged towards us. We both fell to the ground, and I tightly gripped the zombie's throat. The foul stench of decay and fermentation from its mouth made me dizzy. Right at that critical moment, a spear came down from above and pierced through the zombie's head. Then my father swiftly lifted and threw the zombie aside with the spear. That's when I realized it was my father coming out to support us. The daughter rushed into the office, pushed open the door without hesitation, and pulled her wife, mother-in-law, and my mother towards the final sanctuary inside the secret door. I gasped for breath as I struggled to my feet and took another spear from my father's hand. At this moment, the overturned zombie let out a chilling roar, and in the darkness, the zombie horde responded one after another. I just realized that the zombie horde has breached 2 fences and entered the core area of the farm. I immediately felt relieved that I made the decision to have my family gather in the office. Otherwise, after tonight, none of us would have survived. At this moment, the outer walls of the 2-story building on the farm are covered with zombies, smashing windows and breaking in. It's hard to see how many of them there are in the dark night. My father and I immediately retreated to the office, blocked the door with a heavy desk, and then turned around to guard the broken windows of the office. To reach the final shelter through a secret passage, we needed to open 2 heavy fire doors in succession. We wanted to make sure there was enough time for our family to evacuate behind us. At this moment, hordes of zombies are crazily rushing towards the windows of the second-floor office, making it increasingly difficult for us to deal with them using our spears. At a critical moment, my father and I grabbed the prepared Molotov cocktails, lit the wicks one by one, and then fiercely threw them out the window. Under the chilling winter rain, flames shot up from the ground like snakes. The oil secreted by the decaying zombies became a natural fuse, with the Molotov cocktails raining down like a storm. The zombies were instantly engulfed in flames. At the same time, the spreading flames also ignited other buildings on the farm. Soon the entire farm was burning in flames. Watching the carefully constructed shelter crumble in the raging flames, both my father and I felt a wave of intense bitterness and helplessness. At this moment, we heard our daughter's urgent shout from the dark passage behind us, and we knew they had safely retreated. We swiftly rushed into the dark passage and closed 2 heavy fire doors along the way. Right now, the whole family is huddled in the shelter at the end of the dark tunnel, looking at each other in fear. When it was first built, none of us ever imagined that we would one day need to use it in this way. After a long time, my wife suddenly fell to her knees and burst into tears, and my father's eyes also dimmed. Overnight, we lost everything we relied on to survive in the apocalypse. At that moment, the daughter suddenly stood up, holding everyone's hands together, and then placed her own hand on top. She softly said, "As long as our family is together, there is still hope." So we snuggled together, listening to each other's breath and heartbeat, and endured through the long night. At daybreak, my father was the first to wake up. He alertly lifted his head and heard the faint sound of the wind outside. I also wearily opened my eyes, stood up following my father's gaze, and leaned against the rock wall to listen for a moment. My heart suddenly raced at the sound of helicopter rotor spinning. At this moment, a loud horn sounded outside the shelter. It asked if there were any survivors in the farm repeatedly. This This woke up the entire family in disbelief, and everyone listened intently. I simply stumbled and fumbled to open the door, then dashed out through the pitch-black tunnel. Finally, I saw a burst of white light at the tunnel entrance, and the rising sun greeted me from a distance. My heart was pounding, silently repeating to myself that this is not an illusion. Please, tell me this is not an illusion. Just as I burst out of the dark alley, the bright sunlight blurred my vision for a moment. When I came to, a pair of warm hands had already grabbed my arms and I realized I had fainted without knowing it. Armed helicopters are hovering above me, swirling winds making the withered trees creak around us. An elite combat team is clearing out the remaining zombies in the farm. With their high-caliber modern weapons, they are making it as easy as cutting vegetables to face the unarmed zombies. A professional disaster relief team is extinguishing the open flames burning inside the farm and conducting a thorough disinfection for the entire farm. Behind me, several medical staff are helping my family members out of the cave one by one. We watched as hordes of zombies fell like wheat under the intense firepower of the rescue team. I felt like I was in a different world. Under the roaring winds of the propeller, a soldier tightly held my hands and excitedly said, "Comrade, we were sent by your mentor to bring you back home." This scene has appeared in my dreams countless times, but now that it's truly happening before my eyes, I couldn't help but feel a surge of emotions and started crying uncontrollably like a child. The drone that was flying yesterday was actually conducting a military reconnaissance mission of the terrain. The tech department used the last location of my phone signal before it disappeared to roughly pinpoint the location of the farm. Then, the drone was used to lock down the exact coordinates of the farm. The rescue came at dawn, when the raging zombie horde had already completely taken over the farm. The fully armed combat team quickly showed the zombies the power of modern weapons. The wandering zombies in the forest were soon smashed into a pool of flesh under the barrage of machine gun fire. Even if they couldn't die for a while, they had completely lost their ability to move. Later, escorted by a helicopter, my family left the almost ruined farm. Following my repeated reminders, the on-site technical team tried their best to recover the data and samples from the farm's laboratory. On the helicopter, we all turned back at the same time and watched the wilderness flying rapidly beneath us, trying to find a farm where we had placed all our hopes. The deserted village and the fireworks factory that had long been destroyed. The soldier with us said they found a large group of survivors in an abandoned factory near the village. Another rescue team is on their way to check on them. I finally feel a bit relieved knowing that the leaders are also likely to be safe and sound. According to the technical team, a team composed of global medical and research forces is conducting vaccine development work in a heavily guarded research institute. They currently need the global scientific community to join in and help with survival efforts. The apocalypse has brought irreversible devastation to global civilizations, but the spark of hope still remains as humanity continues to strive on despite the losses. And the key to ending this apocalypse lies in the seaweed extract discovered by the mentor team. The tech department has developed a first-generation virus inhibitor based on seaweed extracts, which can effectively delay the rotting time of the infected individuals. Next, the research institute will start upgrading and iterating on the inhibitors. In the words of the mentor, he needs his former team and his best students. The technician gave my shoulder a firm pat and said, "The front line has sounded the horn for a counterattack. The success or failure of vaccine development will determine the outcome of this war. Researcher, your research and development outcomes will determine the fate of millions of survivors." I immediately felt the heavy responsibility on my shoulders and solemnly nodded. Right at that moment, everyone's phones in the cabin vibrated simultaneously. I couldn't believe it and quickly grabbed my phone to look at the screen. I stared at it dumbfounded for a while, and before I knew it, tears were welling up in my eyes. At this very moment, in every city, town, shelter, and with every survivor who can receive messages, a text has been sent simultaneously. The sender of this message is a fleet of hundreds of unmanned aerial vehicles equipped with airborne base stations. They can cover up to 80 square kilometers of land and provide stable signals to all electronic devices in the area. Thousands of signals, like a web of interconnected cables, are linking every survivor to convey a common message to them. Dear all survivors, this is the Federal Rescue Emergency Command Center. In the long past, we have experienced a global catastrophe, and we mourn deeply for all the victims of the disaster. We promise to all the survivors who can hear this message that rescue centers in each region will be established in the next 3 to 5 weeks. No matter where you are, help is on the way. We believe that the gloom will pass, and flowers will bloom again. On the day of victory, look towards the direction of the rising sun. That is the dawn chorus of a new civilization, echoing in the Federation as the sun rises. A helicopter is flying over the burning streets, vast plains, and rolling mountains at this moment. It is heading towards the last hope of humanity, facing the rising sun on the horizon. I am a junior researcher at the Ocean Research Institute. Here is my survival story in a world ravaged by a zombie apocalypse. At this moment, I will unite with all surviving researchers to embark on the long journey of carrying on the flame of civilization, together igniting the dawn of a new era for humanity. Thank you for watching. The story concludes.